Hello, I'm Jerry Bennett, and welcome. In one sense, this is a studio, in that it's very conducive to creativity, but in a larger sense, I think it's a shop because whatever you think up, you can actually build here. But Peggy and I refer to it simply as the barn. It seems like only yesterday that we were right down there turning pins and vessels and having the time of our life. We had just taken a couple of classes and it was a lot of fun, absolute lot of fun. The thing about it is that was 20 years ago. Can you believe that? 20 years ago, and we're still having fun. Of course, as the project became a little more involved, we began suffering from what we call barn creep. If you have a barn, you will fill it up eventually. You can see we had a major problem with dust. We had a major problem trying to get anything finished, and forget finding anything. We set out to do something about it. Our goal was to end up with a space that's easy to maintain, comfortable, and it took us a long time to do it. That was then, this is now. Take a quick look. There is quite a difference between then and now. The lift has enabled us to move equipment that we don't use on a regular basis up and out of the way. Almost everything is on wheels, and the table legs do not touch the floor. We can actually reconfigure this whole shop if we need to. Every project that I do starts and ends right here with this workbench. This workbench was one of the first things that we built for the shop. It has a maple top that we got from Woodcraft. I put a maple band around it with a little Paduke. These are for edging doors and putting hinges on doors and stuff like that. The bottom, simply 4x4s from Home Depot. This is what we call the tool crypt. It has 32 drawers. It's made very solid. The drawers are all dovetailed and they have 1/4-inch bottoms for strength, so you can put just about anything in them. And we do. It'll hold quite a load, and it's been doing the job for 20 years. When we started doing this, we kind of set our goal to make functionality first. We wanted everything to be ergonomically pleasant, and then if we had a little bit of room left, we would take care of some aesthetics, and it's worked out pretty good. And like I said before, every project starts and ends right here. As woodturners, we love to share what we make and how we make it. We learned a long time ago that photos and videos puts us in touch with the world. The Wynn Home Arts Center here in Huntsville invited me to do a show. It turned out to be a lot of fun. They gave me the banners afterwards. This is our photo wall. When it's not in use, it's just another wall. As you saw earlier, this little photo table moves down out of the way quite nicely. With this photo wall, we can use 3 different backgrounds, including a green screen. Larger projects, such as the AAW journal cover, require the backdrop to cover the floor as well as the wall. Every detail, including reflections, must be taken into consideration. It turned out pretty good. Peggy did the photography. This is my downdraft table. Not every woodturner has a need for this. I learned early on, for me, it was a necessity. It would surprise you how much dust a small piece like this will generate. A larger one can generate many pounds of fine dust. You can see this from our before photo. Practically everything I turn is carved and sanded to refine the curves. This downdraft table is a commercial unit that I severely modified for ergonomics and efficiency. With this type design, it is practically maintenance-free. I deliberately made these armrests black. So when I'm carving or sanding, if I get dust on here, then I know that I'm too close to the edge. I need to move out. This table has been a lifesaver. Sometimes you get a great idea for a piece, then you have to come up with some way to make it happen. This is exactly how the bandsaw finger came about. To make the yellow brick road, I needed to be able to make cuts 3-dimensionally, and most of the time, the surface of the bandsaw is not at the right angle. This simple finger turned out to be a great solution. With it, the cut is always supported. I use it regularly on most of my projects. Here's an example that I'm working on now. The finger has saved me a lot of carving time by accurately trimming away all this excess wood. Now, Hot Licks is a piece that greatly benefited from the finger. I do have to say this. The bandsaw, just like the table saw, is not your friend. It will bite you when you least expect it. I've always liked glass art. When I started wood turning and experimenting with shapes, I really wanted to figure out a way to make pieces that have the fluidity of glass. The centuries-old Armature turned out to be the answer. I kind of figured if it works in the Statue of Liberty, it would certainly work for me. The Armature enables me to craft shapes that easily go from small to large and still have the strength to survive. My ultimate goal was to eliminate boundaries in designing wood art. To make an armature, I first shape it with aluminum wire, then I duplicate it in steel. I kind of push the boundaries early on with this piece, opening act. It's 10 feet tall. I know now this is only the beginning of what is possible. All of the bending equipment and welders are upstairs and out of the way. I bring them down, as needed. The heavy welding is done outside so I don't mess everything up. The smaller projects, I use an acetylene torch. Works great. Any special hardware needed for a project I can also make with this mill and metal lathe. Now, when I said earlier, whatever you can think up you can make in this shop, I really meant it. This is my Cyclone dust collector made from galvanized sheet metal. I saved quite a bit of money. It cost me about $50 to make. Can you believe that? But at the same time, I was able to make it a lot more efficient than commercial units by applying a few aerodynamic principles. My stabilization process is basically the same as everyone else's, with possibly 3 exceptions. First, after putting a slight vacuum in this tank, I can draw the liquid up into it as much as I want to. And after the vacuuming process is over, then I can drain it back down into the tank. Second, these ovens can vary up and down quite a bit, especially with a light load. I added gravel to slow the process down a little bit. Now the temperature stays within a few degrees pretty easily. The third thing is I'd like to know exactly what the temperature is inside of the wood. So I put one sensor inside a block of wood the same size as the pieces that I'm using, and then the other sensor is open to the inside of the oven. As I am stabilizing glued rings, I want to reach the temperature inside the wood quickly and accurately, but not compromise the glue and the wood exposed to the inside of the oven. This has worked really well for me. You were probably wondering when I was going to get around to the table saw. I cut a lot of segments, all sizes and shapes. This simple guard keeps them from spitting back at me. They can pile up as long as they stay behind the teeth of the blade. It's simply made from Corian. I am considering exploring the soccer ball as art. Of course, the goal of this little sled is to make all of the pieces accurate with no need for test cuts. The balls you saw earlier were made with it. They turned out surprisingly well. So far, so good. Another cool thing to come out of this shop was the Wedgie Sled. Cutting segments used to be the purview of the mathematically gifted. Not anymore. Cutting segments now is a no-brainer. The Wedgie Sled actually is a mathematical concept based on a high school geometry. It can be implemented with a variety of sled designs based on what you need to do. It'll work with about anything that has a blade: the table saw, the chop saw, and even the bandsaw. To show how simple the concept is, here's one made with 4 nails, 2 screws, and a triangle from Hobby Lobby. And here's the 12-segment ring made with it. By the way, please do not try this at home. The Wedgie Sled actually came about after Randy Chin asked me to use my CNC machine to make him a good sled for cutting segments. I told him, okay, but it won't be anything like you'd expect. I figured out the concept quite some time before, so Andy actually became a good excuse to get on with it, and I did. He had been invited to do a segmenting demonstration in Taiwan. Of course, shipping tools and equipment to another country is always a problem. You never know when or if your stuff will show up. He simply threw a wedgie in his suitcase, and when he got there, he made a basic wedgie sled on the spot. And the demo went great. Andy presented this to me at one of our wood turning meetings. This spectacular vessel was made with the wedgie sled. What's really cool is it has 15 segments in a ring. With an odd number, you know there's no room for error. Every segment had to be spot on, and they are, of course. His craftsmanship is impeccable. This is really a very special gift. Thank you, Andy. This is the Vitz Hansen carving station. It's an important part of this shop. I met Vitz several years ago at a photo shoot we were doing here in Huntsville. Vitz was in his 90s at the time and is sadly gone now. Vitz was a master carver and furniture maker. He created the most intricate of designs in the classical style. His craftsmanship was also wonderful. Peggy and I were generously invited to visit his shop. The shop tour is a tradition that is still alive and well. Vitz's work was all done by hand. He said it makes it last longer. Now, right in the middle of the shop floor was a bowling ball captured in a wood frame. Pinned to the ball was a chunk of wood. He could easily reposition it in any direction, rotate it at will, and lock it in place. The weight of the ball enabled using a mallet and tools without any problems whatsoever. What a brilliant idea. He didn't say if it was his invention, but I credit him for sharing it anyway. With his guidelines, I made this one. It's mounted on a hydraulic table that can be moved anywhere. I primarily use it for assembly, but it's also handy in the paint room. On this particular ball, I can mount a chuck or a faceplate. I have another one that has holes in it for simple pins. I sure do thank you, Vitz. Larry Zara, a good friend, came up to me at a Gulf Coast Woodturners meeting, handed me a clipping from the journal. It was a call for entry from the Woodturning Center. Larry said, and I quote, "You have to enter a piece in this show. It is perfect for you. It is you. The show's name is Dysfunctional." I'd not turned a regular vessel in quite a while, so I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do for this show. Decanter Cant was my entry. The show turned out to be very successful and toured for 2 years. I only bring up this piece because Decanter Cant incorporates a couple of things worth mentioning. First, the neck incorporates freeform segmenting in places where there are kinks. Freeform is where the segments follow the shape and do not radiate from a central point. For the neck to look bent, the segments have to have the same width as the final form. Freeform segmenting is useful in many ways, but not a typical round shape. As you can imagine, this technique has many possibilities. Second, the bottom of this piece is unique. It's made like this. It incorporates what I call wall following construction. Wall following is where the ring glue line is always perpendicular to the wall, not horizontal. Done correctly, a bottom made in this way will not separate. Well, the soccer ball came about because of a friend of mine, Dave Muller. His granddaughter is a soccer ball player and asked for a wood soccer ball from Grandpa. So Dave called me and we kind of got together. And this is a result so far. It turned out pretty good. I have a jig that can make these. And Here's another one. And the jig is working out pretty good because you can see there's, you know, you don't have any cracks or anything like that. So that's done pretty good. There's a lot of things that you can do with segmenting, and a lot of things we've tried and a lot of things that have not been tried, but I thought I would share with you a little bit about what I've been looking at. Of course, we've already talked about the segmented bottoms wall following. You've seen these, the cube type vessels where the cubes are basically vertical. And I've been experimenting around with making it round following the curve, and it's going to work out pretty good. But if you want to experiment with this, Google tessellization of a sphere using hexagons. It's not for the faint of heart, I can tell you that. And we've already talked about the Armature method. Open segmenting is really interesting if you align the segments. This is a piece that I did called Maple Serple. And the way you accomplish this is you first have to drill holes in the segments so you can open up these areas here. Isn't that cool? The other thing is if you take and make a segment on the Wedgie Sled with the fences skewed one way, you end up with a segment that looks like this. Well, interestingly enough, that is exactly the shape of segment that you need to do a star. And you can do stars of multiple points or whatever. See, that's pretty cool. And if you lay the blade over, you can do it three-dimensionally. I didn't finish it out because I didn't modify the angle where it would do that, but the proof of concept is there. So that's pretty neat. You can do spirals, all kinds of stuff. I've done a little bit with zigzags, but what about doing a zigzag that doesn't follow the rules? See, you can do things like this. This box has an interesting lid. I took Cindy Drozda's class. I think I was one of her best students in finials, don't you? But anyway, the box lid, it will only fit one way. And I put a couple of dots there so I would know where it is. But if you take a look closely, the lid and the bottom, they fit each other perfectly, but there's nothing symmetrical about it. Everything is different. There's so much that you can do with segmenting. On the lathe or off the lathe, whatever. The future is really bright. You can do about anything. We're going to end this little soiree with a fun little barn dance, woodturner style.